Welcome to the sixth episode of Mol België Season 13 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Armstrong, and joining me as always is the Canadian who regularly uses a tool to help him go from easy to hard, Logan Saunders.
Good afternoon.
And the guy who has never found it difficult to get a backswing with a long shaft, David Bindley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Have you had good weeks?
I have.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. After last week, I did manage to source a packet of paprika chips, which have not tried yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was going to say, we're getting some live ASMR here.
I can do that if you'd like.
if you eat exactly half of the bag, you get to talk to the mole.
Deal.
Let's go.
And this is the point where I remind everyone how wonderful audio opening bags of crisps is.
Remember how last week we had the whole discussion about 550 episodes and it's come to talking about favourite chips? It's 551 and now we're on ASMR.
Yeah. Well, I do have to point out this is not the first moment of ASMR on the podcast because I did eat Tim Tams on the last Hunted episode.
They're fine. Like, I don't get the big deal.
This week-long setup was so unbelievably worth it.
To be fair, I don't think these are Belgian chips, though. They are made in New Zealand, so basically the same thing.
Even worse.
It's Oceania's Belgium.
Yeah. You can really taste the sheep anus.
Made in a really backwards country. And I'm saying this knowing that by the time this comes out, I will be only slightly over a week away from actually going to said backwards country. Have you had a good week, Saunders?
Yeah, the federal election happened yesterday.
Yeah, and you get hard-hitting political content during our Bidham Historian season this year. Because we recorded one of the episodes this week, last night. We're going to record another one tomorrow, and that's the last one.
Yep.
A lot of it's funny when you look at the election graph or which party got elected where. So I pretty much lived right at the start of where all the opposition seats were elected.
Yeah.
So Facebook has been an interesting experience since last night.
It's funny how you look at who the three main party leaders were 6 months ago. None of them are in the new parliament because two of them lost their seats and Trudeau's resigned.
Yep.
And been replaced by someone who a large proportion of the UK hate because he used to be the governor of the Bank of England.
Yeah.
And politicised the role. So he has a little bit of baggage when it comes to the UK. And I believe you've been spending your week destroying small children, Saunders.
I took my nieces bowling, yes, for their birthdays. My youngest niece perfected the ricochet shot with using the bumpers, where the ball hits the side railing and it bounces off, and then suddenly it's in the center hitting a few pins.
And you also went to Vancouver for a concert.
Yes, I saw Nelly, Ja Rule, Chingy, Jaquan, and Murphy Lee. Yes, they were all.
Those are
names.
names.
A very fun concert. Who knew I would go to an early 2000s hip hop concert?
Or modern day, as it's called in Canada.
And then next door, Lionel Messi was playing soccer, so it was nuts in downtown Vancouver.
Yeah, I was going to ask what was next door because I knew I'd seen a story of yours on Instagram about it. I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah, so it's just, in fact, when I first landed in Vancouver, I went out for lunch before going to the concert, and then they said, "Oh, are you here to see Lionel Messi?" And I said, "No, I'm pretty sure it's just the concert." And they said, "No, Lionel Messi's playing against the Vancouver team," because I completely forgot that Lionel Messi plays for the Miami team in Major League Soccer now. So
it's the Whitecaps, I think, isn't it?
The Vancouver team is the Whitecaps. Yeah.
See, I remember these things.
And apparently the Whitecaps are becoming a bit of a big deal in Vancouver overall, where it's really become like the second biggest sports team in Vancouver.
I was going to say, I think the Canucks would have something to say about that.
Yes.
You say you remember these things, Michael, but is the Red Lions basketball or hockey?
Oh, who cares? That's Belgium, that doesn't matter.
So anyways, the Rogers Arena and BC Place are right next to each other. So BC Place is where the Vancouver Whitecaps and the BC Lions play. Then Rogers Arena is where the Canucks play. So the concert was at Rogers Arena, and then the soccer game, of course, was at BC Place. So to get to Rogers Arena, I had to get through the whole BC Place crowd, and that was tens of thousands of people hanging out there.
Yeah, I've been to an event at the Rogers Arena. Hence, my knowledge of the Canucks, because I went when we were last in Vancouver. And if you told me a week ago that you were going to have a messy time in Vancouver, I would have believed it, but not that kind of messy. It's not your kind of wet and messy.
But yeah, in Vancouver, not too many big events happen on a Thursday night in the middle of spring, and there had to be probably 100,000 or so people hanging out in that area.
It does seem like very bad scheduling to have an event at BC Place and at Rogers Arena on the same night.
Yeah.
I know in terms of football in the UK, they deliberately schedule football matches so that teams in the same city aren't playing on the same day. So, like, you will never get United and City playing on the same night unless they're playing each other.
Yeah, because public transit would just be a nightmare. Luckily, my hostel I was staying at was about a 35-minute walk from the arenas, and it's through the west side of Vancouver, so it's actually safe to walk through that way downtown for 40 minutes.
So you didn't go to Gastown again?
No, I did not.
Did you go to Corner Gastown?
No, that's another province.
Okay.
Hasn't Amazing Race Canada actually been to that set?
Yes.
Yeah, like wasn't that the whole joke you made? You made a joke about them sticking the U-turn board at the Corner Gas pub, and then they did.
I made that joke.
I think one of you did.
Well, it won't have been me because I don't care about Canada.
When was this? I don't doubt it. I'm just trying to remember what the context and when I would have joked about it would have been. Was it a podcast or a blog?
I don't know.
It would have been years ago, regardless.
I feel like one of you made a joke about them running out of ideas, and that's sort of the level they were going to get to. And then they did. And that was, 5 years ago when, they still had things they could have done. But now I hope that, everybody enjoys 3 blocks of downtown Toronto every season.
That sort of a joke has Saunders written all over it.
The Corner Gas one, yeah, it does.
Because I would have tapped out long before that.
Because Corner Gas Visit was season 7, wasn't it?
5, I want to say.
We were still podcasting during 5. I don't think it happened then.
Yeah.
It can't have been during 5.
Yeah, I think we would have. Yeah, there would have been a.
Because my first question would have been, Logan, what the fuck is Corner Gas?
It had to be season 6 or 7.
This is way too much discussion of this show at 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. And on the vague subject of shows that inexplicably are still on television, I have, for my sins, been catching up on Jeopardy UK this week. I'm 7 episodes in. I've watched 5 episodes in the past 2 days, and I am thoroughly whelmed. Regardless of my personal feelings about not getting cast on it, it's been an interesting watch as a viewer of Jeopardy.
Have any of the contestants been pusillanimous?
Well, in fact, he did call someone a wuss, which is how I describe myself in my final Jeopardy wager. I put 0 in brackets, sorry, I'm a wuss. And he did call the current returning champion, as of the time of me watching it, a wuss for only wagering £500, I think it was.
Oh, yeah.
Which is lower than all 3 of my wagers, I think, for Daily Doubles. Mind you, I was on a much higher score than she was at that point, but, humble brag. On better television news, Traitors Quebec is amazing. I keep nagging you guys to watch it because I watched the Murder in Plain Sight episode last week and it was absolutely nuts. Sweden's also back and they had a very interesting twist as well.
Oh.
When the group got together, they had to select someone who was the most trustworthy, I think, and then that person had to select the person that they trusted the least in the group.
Right.
That person then got isolated in the castle's dungeon, and the host gave them a private offer. Do you want to become a traitor or stay as a faithful? That person got to pick their role.
Ah, that's cool.
So they knew going into the round table whether they were going to get a tap on the shoulder or not.
Interesting.
Have you found any more information on Corner Gas, Saunders? Or
yes, I did. Apparently it was during season 5 when we were still podcasting about it.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Man, if only somebody had written something about it.
So we did talk about it. We definitely made jokes about it, considering we had a podcast, a full episode about it.
Well, you know as well as I do, at that point in the podcast, I was very much only doing Amazing Race Canada because you made me do it. So I would have been beyond checked out of Amazing Race Canada by that point.
And it would have been one of the episodes you would have been more invested in, because that was the Adam and Andrea boot episode.
Oh yeah, them.
That was your favorite team from the season, I think, or rather, the only team you kind of liked other than Zed and Shabir.
Yeah, that was the season with the Condiment Kid, wasn't it?
Yeah, Johnny Mustard. Yeah, and now I can't even make jokes about that for obvious reasons.
You can't. I can.
Yeah.
I can't believe how accurate I've been with the season 11 route so far.
I can because they have no creativity.
Hey, they did. Apparently, they're in a territory for the first time in 6 years.
Yeah, you're doing creative writing. They are a team with zero creativity after 11 seasons of this show.
Yeah, when it comes to creative location choices, they have none of it.
You can just assume that you're getting a glare for that.
Yeah, I know.
So, previously, the final six travelled to the Gulf of Thailand to continue their hunt for the mole. After a nasty trick at a skydiving school, 4 of them got to jump from a plane while answering questions from their loved ones, while Alexi and Michelle jumped themselves on a trampoline. After a surprise challenge to refuel at a petrol station, they were given an early test, including questions about a challenge they could influence. A trek through the jungle saw Alexi gain useless knowledge of what Pedro had answered, but more importantly saw us lose an icon in the form of Hilda, who was the 5th person sent packing. And we flash back to night 1 and their first meal, where Gilles was handing out the mole books. And what we didn't see was he told them to write their names on the mole book and the sentence, "I am not the mole." And he says the mole has immediately lied in writing.
Why would the mole lie?
Of course, Pedro wrote his like he was illustrating a Belgian comic book.
I know you spent the entire day, or the entire day yesterday, trying to analyse people's handwriting, Bindles, but we're going to get to this. I don't think that handwriting was very helpful.
No.
I think it was deliberately unhelpful, as most of this sort of a thing is on Belgium Mole.
Not as unhelpful as having a bunch of pass frogging.
Yeah, we'll also get to that. So it's morning of day 13 in Sriracha, and they're eating eggs, and Michelle said she started gorging in kindergarten and gave herself a busted liver and turned herself yellow.
You're turning violet, Violet.
And in their accommodation are 2 helmets and a note asking for 2 gigglers, as Thailand is the land of smiles. They will earn 2,000 euros if they keep smiling through the next challenge, but they will lose 100 euros every time someone stops smiling. And they choose the smiliest people of all, Sarah and Alexi.
And apparently I'm not the only one who finds it funny when people fall down. I've never seen somebody laugh so hard at just thinking about somebody falling down like Alexi. Oh, my brother fell down, guys. It's like, we weren't there. We can't even visualize it for ourselves. Oh no, I know. I'm just thinking about it right now. Oh yeah. Oh, that's when he fell.
And then his face got blue again.
Yeah, and then we had to take him to the hospital, and he had to get a bunch of stitches, and he ended up failing his test.
His brother's falling over, and Alexi's laughing at him, and that's just rude.
What a bitch.
I saw someone point out on Discord this week that the Keisha and Jen versus Luke fight is even funnier because Jen learned how to sign bitch in ASL. So she made sure that Luke knew exactly what she was calling him. It's just the level of effort that she went to.
That's why they became friends after the race. Luke just had mad respect for that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty baller troll move, to be honest.
Yeah.
So the other 3 are taken to a golf course and taught the basics, while Sarah and Alexi are prepared.
And can we talk about Nimrod's names for his grandparents?
Yeah, I mean, cast your mind back to last year. Charlotte's nickname was Puss, if you remember.
Well, now there's apparently Grandma Puss and Grandma and Grandpa Pigeon.
Yeah.
I know it's... we can't reference contestants' family members on this podcast, but...
I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
Me and Bindles can say what we want.
Yeah. I'm not the one who has to meet these people, Logan.
Very true.
That's true, yeah. That's not like they're going to fly from Belgium to Australia.
This is the concerning point of the season where 3/4 of the people who are left after this episode we will be meeting and having deeply awkward conversations with.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Nimrod, were you jealous of the steering wheel last week?
If Nimrod gets to the final 3, we should ask him to take a picture with you acting as Hilda Saunders.
Yeah.
So Gilles meets the golfers and tells them they can win €2,000 of their own by beating local champion Mr. Ho in a one-hole challenge.
Oh, Mr. Ho.
They can earn handicaps for Mr. Ho by answering quiz questions. If they're right, they will earn a handicap, but the wrong answers will be attached to golf balls that are also attached to wax strips attached to Sarah and Alexi's legs and arms.
I just want, like, at the finale, a little bit of a clip of Gilles testing this.
I can go one better. There is already a clip of them sticking a wax strip on Gilles' leg.
Did they hit it off with the golf ball?
They did not. I believe Sarah just ripped it off his leg, but it's already on the Instagram as of this afternoon.
Okay.
All I have to say when the wax strips are revealed is this plucking show.
I love Pedro just sort of seeing it and just, trying to be positive, basically being like, isn't waxing the fun kind of pain where you can still laugh, and everybody just instantly going, no, not that Pedro.
Well, this is the thing, like, in terms of hair removal from the guys, Pedro has the most experience of the 3 of them because he has tattoos. And I believe you at least have to shave the area you're getting tattooed.
It's too bad Seven and Justin weren't doing this.
Oh, they would have absolutely punched the Thai woman in the face.
Yeah. They would have punched Mr. Ho.
But the other thing that isn't really alluded to is, regardless of whether they got these questions right or not, they were losing the hair on their legs. Or Alexi was, because there is no easy way to remove a wax strip. There's only one way for that wax strip to be removed, because you can't de-stick it. It had to be pulled off in some fashion, either via a golf ball or by someone doing it very quickly or very slowly, depending on how much pain he could endure. But he was losing the hair on his legs regardless.
Yeah.
As soon as that challenge started. So they must answer their questions by shooting arrows at flags across the course. And the first question is what the most painful part of the body for a man to wax is according to a survey, either the armpits, arms, stomach, shin, or eyebrows.
I'm surprised testicles weren't on the list.
Yeah, apparently they don't have backsack and cracks in Belgium.
I think it's a fairly easy 50-50 choice, this one, even knowing that the answer's going to end up being armpits. Because it's not going to be arms, because they wouldn't put Alexi through that as part of the challenge. It's not going to be stomach, because a lot of men wax their chests and that sort of thing. And it's not going to be shin, because, cyclists and swimmers exist. They wouldn't encourage waxing for cyclists or swimmers if it was going to be the most painful part of the body to wax your legs. So it was only ever going to be armpits or eyebrows. And I would have punted for armpits, given how thin the skin is on your armpit.
Look, we know you would have.
I probably would have guessed eyebrows first and then armpits.
I would have guessed armpits first just because, of all the nerve endings.
Yeah. Eyebrows would make you cry, but I think armpits, the skin is thinner, so I would have punted for that.
Yeah, shaving your eyebrows definitely doesn't make you smile.
No, because it's the same argument as where's the most painful place to get tattooed. It's anywhere where there's thin skin. So, according to Fuzzy, who watched Ink Master and I didn't, she should have known the answer to that question because any time anyone in Ink Master got their armpits tattooed, it was really, really painful.
We haven't discussed how badly Fuzzy's doing at bingo this season yet, have we?
We haven't. It feels a bit too punching down. If we're going to punch down, we do it to Saunders. We don't do it to Fuzzy necessarily.
I was worried that if we talked about this, it would be one of the squares for bingo this week.
Oh no, she has a personal policy of not putting any bingo squares on the bingo board. It's a bit too bingoception, she thinks.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fuzzy is, like me potentially for Belgian Mole finales, 0 for 5 this season so far. And it's got to the point where I really, really want her to have my historian's clue, so she's getting it this week regardless. If she gets bingo, I'll make it slightly easier for her. So they choose stomach, and are wrong, and it was armpit, as we said, and Sarah stopped smiling, so they lose €100. The second question is for a pair of wobbly shoes for 3 strokes, And they are asked which of the following treatments do not exist: either a Brazilian wax, a Hollywood wax, a French wax, a Californian wax, or a Russian wax.
I think in a Russian wax they just drive over your hair with a snowplow.
I thought it involved a pickaxe.
Did you guys know the answer to this question?
No.
No.
Do I look like I know anything about waxing, Michael?
Yes. You look like a man who knows all about hair removal, Bindles. Given we know you as the Bingo Bear. I mean, I'd heard of a Brazilian, obviously, and a Hollywood wax, and vaguely recognised a French wax, so I knew it was either California or Russian. I think it's Russian that was the wrong answer, or was the right answer in this case. I think it's Russian that doesn't exist, but...
Apparently they don't wax in Russia.
Yeah, I haven't Googled it, because I will get on a watch list. So Alexi and Sarah can also remove wrong answers by completing words in a karaoke version, and they remove A and D from the answers, but Sarah again loses them €100, as does Alexi, and they choose French wax and are wrong again. The third round asks what they can do to reduce the pain of waxing: either apply sun cream, drink wine, apply talcum powder, shave beforehand, or use a tanning bed.
I'm surprised they went with French wax, considering when you think of like all the different types of waxes there were. That you gotta think, well, which do you associate with people not having hair? And I feel like with French wax, that'd be one of the countries that tends to lean towards like beauty and cosmetics and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get to this at the end of the episode, but I think it's fairly likely that the mole was on that side of the challenge.
It does look like a Californian wax is real, so it must have been Russian.
Yeah, I have just Googled on private browsing Russian wax, and it's not come up with anything, so yeah. I'm assuming Russian's the correct answer there.
Californian wax removes the band of hair that runs along your outer pant line and top of the legs, and generally you can customize how high you would like to go.
Ah.
So basically like the little V line sort of thing where, right at the bottom of your torso.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Hollywood wax is a real one, so therefore it must be Russian. Did you know the reduce the pain of waxing answer?
I did not.
I mean, there's some obvious joke answers in there. Drink wine is never going to be the answer, although Michelle does say, yeah, drinking wine makes everything better.
I mean, she is correct.
The tanning bed was my favorite.
Yeah, tanning bed is a brilliant wrong answer. I think they say don't shave beforehand because there needs to be enough hair to actually grab with wax. So therefore it goes down to sun cream or talcum powder, and given that I'm pretty sure they put talcum powder on Alexi's legs before sticking the strips on there, Alexi could have told them the answer to that question was talcum powder.
Yeah. I did think it was hilarious that we didn't find out until about the third round that this challenge was sponsored by TUI, which, I mean, their new advertising slogan that this is marginally less painful than being waxed by accident is maybe not going to take off.
Yeah, I was going to say, or I was fully intending on saying, if they hadn't done the whole Chewy sponsorship in the second half of this challenge, did you spot who the sponsor of this challenge was? Because there was a Chewy symbol on all the golf balls. And I clocked it in round 1. The thing I didn't clock during this challenge was the mole sabotage we find out later, because it is visible in this first challenge.
Oh.
The views of Sarah and Alexi grimacing during this bit of the challenge, it does say mode easy for Alexi and mode hard for Sarah.
Ah.
So what about John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John?
I mean, it's a bit of a mean challenge to make them do karaoke while still smiling, but yeah, it was an interesting duet from them both.
I wish they would have used the wax during the song being played, but I guess they would only do that to Axel or Waxel.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the TV show Killer Karaoke, which was adapted as Sing If You Can?
Killer Karaoke? Does someone actually get killed while they're performing?
No, so it was early 2010s, I think it was. It was a brief trend. I think it was it's obviously a Japanese show, but I think it was adapted in the US first. It's people singing karaoke to earn money for a pot, but stuff's happening to them, so it's stuff like they're being dangled into a pit full of snakes and that sort of stuff. But the UK version was for charity, and it was celebrities doing it. And I'm pretty sure that they did You're the One That I Want with 2 guys getting waxed as one of the challenges. They definitely did Two Guys Getting Waxed, and I think it might have been this song, because I seem to remember them taking great pleasure in ripping wax strips off someone's chest as he sang "I Got Chills."
So, do you think Jill would happen to watch that like 15 years ago and took that as the idea for this challenge?
If it is a deliberate reference to Sing If You Can, that is a very obscure reference for them to do.
It reminds you of that bit from The Simpsons where, like, okay, we got to come up with fresh ideas to keep this show going. Everyone, take out your TV remotes and channel surf until we find something we can do.
Unfortunately, the song that they actually had to sing when they were getting waxed was "Don't Leave Me This Way." It was a truly terrible show, but it was pretty funny.
I'm still busy in my head trying to make a "You're the One That I Wax" part work in my head.
My personal favourite was one of the actresses from The Bill being dressed as a fox and being dropped into bins whilst trying to sing "The Only Way Is Up." It is on YouTube. It is worth watching. So they do say talcum powder, and it's correct, meaning that Alexi and Sarah still have hair on their arms briefly until they rip it off. And Mr. Ho now has to play 3 shots with a ridiculously long golf club.
It feels like cheating that he was allowed to hold the club at like a normal height.
Yeah, it still sent him off balance,
Yeah.
at least. I think normally he would have easily done that hole in about 3 shots, so they picked the right one to win in terms of the giant club, I think.
Yeah.
Jill ends the smiling and tells them they stop smiling 13 times between them, 5 for Alexi and 8 for Sarah. And that means they earn €700 of 2,000 for that challenge.
If only they had Joan Rivers.
Yeah, the mole's sabotage should have been not giving anyone Botox before that challenge.
Yeah, Botox removal.
And he also offers the golfers a bonus handicap, but if they take it, they will halve their money on offer. And they decide to take it and give Mr. Ho the upside down goggles for the first 3 holes.
I just love that for a moment there, they seem to genuinely, stupidly think they could take a pro golfer on a course he knows very well.
Only Nimrod, I think, was the only one who advocated to not do the additional handicap. I believe everyone else disagreed with Nimrod.
I don't think Michelle went for it, really.
I think she eventually did and was endorsed it. It's like, he's a professional.
Yeah.
We suck.
Before the execution, did you still think that Pedro was the mole?
No, he's been pretty low on my list the past couple of weeks, I think.
I think this was, even ignoring the fact that Pedro does go home at the end of this episode, spoilers, it was a very Pedro is a contestant, what the hell are you doing, Flanders, the third of you suspecting him episode.
Yeah.
Because all of the social media has been basically Pedro going, yeah, sorry, Flanders, a third of you suspected me and you were wrong. They have taken great pleasure in teasing a third of Flanders. So with his 2 handicaps, he only hits 21 metres in his first 6 shots, with 159 metres left. And he gets it in the hole in 10 strokes. And after a slightly rough time, the candidates failed to sink it in 9 shots, meaning they earn nothing of €2,000 for that challenge.
I have a stupid question. They get to the very end and Michelle's taken the final shot, and I know she misses by a mile, so like who knows whether it's accidental or deliberate. But why was she using an iron and not a putter?
I don't know. That could have been a very deliberate sabotage from a mole.
Maybe in the mole's briefcase, they were able to
fit like the giant club. She just stuck like the giant club in the briefcase and just sort of folded up like one of the blind people poles.
Yeah. I mean, I can say this now that there are no more switches on the pool allowed. I am very convinced after this episode that Michelle is the mole.
Same.
Interesting.
This was a very big episode for Michelle being hella suspicious at every opportunity, especially in this challenge.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty much like it's either Michelle or Nimrod, and if it's any of the other two, it'll be a huge freaking shock for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, selfishly, I obviously don't want us to be on the same suspects going to Antwerp, but it might be safer for me if we are. Maybe we need to coordinate our suspicions next week, Saunders.
I mean, the obvious solution is for the 3 of us to end up on 3 separate people in the finale.
But that would be mean to Fuzzy for her to try and have to guess that.
I don't care.
Especially if we say it on the podcast and then actually give our real suspicions on social media afterwards. And the best thing is, I'm going to leave that in the episode just to, threaten Fuzzy slightly that we might do that next week if we're feeling mean.
If.
I mean, Pedro, we know he's a candidate now, but Jesus Christ, that man cannot golf.
None of those three can. Especially Nimrod.
I wonder how much they had to pay the golf club to repair the fairway.
Yeah, he whiffed it with a couple of them shots. Ruined the turf.
That'll be 500 euros. I thought production was very generous to not count any of the whiff shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, we have to make this remotely competitive, guys.
I don't think they could have planned it any better than it coming down to the final shot and then being missed, rather than... I think Pedro ended up taking 3 bonus shots, so it would have been long finished before then.
Yeah, if it was Mario Golf, it would have been, or Walkabout Mini Golf, they would have just said, yeah, you lost, we're moving on to the next hole.
So Gilles confirms they earn no money and invites them to a dinner which could be helpful in their search for the mole. However, only 4 of them are allowed to attend.
You know what surprised me the most about this is that I think it's well established that if you're the odd person out, if it's a setup of one person is doing something different from everybody else, the likelihood they're going to have a chance at a massive advantage is extremely high.
Especially as this is like the 3rd time that it's happened to Pedro now.
Where it's like, didn't you guys learn from the other time where you had, what was it, the Ayataya challenge, where Pedro said, okay, I'll take one for the team and be the only person to be assigned a role. And they fell for it here again, where they're like, oh, thank God for sacrificing yourself, Pedro. It's like, it's 5 people. They're not going to give an exemption to 4 people and have only one person vulnerable, I'm pretty sure.
What do you think this is, Survivor?
Yeah. What are we? We're not. Suri isn't in this cast, guys.
So Alexi nominates Michelle as she's not had anything, and Michelle returns the favour. Pedro volunteers to stay behind as he's had so many advantages. And my next sentence is, where have I heard this before? Gilles welcomes the 4 of them to a half dinner. Each candidate who eats half of their dish will earn 500 euros for the pot, and the one who eats closest to half gets an interesting dessert. They get a margin of 20 grams either side for the 500 euros, and whoever eats closest will get a conversation with the mole.
And until we got the results, I thought 20 grams sounded very lenient.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about the golf challenge is that, probably to the Flemish audience, those golf commentators are probably fairly well known, but to us, we couldn't care less and just skipped over it.
Yeah. It's the same. It's the same thing with the bubble soccer commentators and the cycling race commentators. Like, it's basically like a once a season thing that they bring in some sort of sports person, and the 3 of us just don't care because A, Belgian, and B, sports.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the best part was them making fun of Pedro being king of the driving range.
So Alexi chooses to have green curry, Sarah gets wonton soup, Michelle shrimp soup, and Nimrod rice noodles with chicken. There is just one problem: all of the dishes are incredibly spicy. Each of the dishes weighs 400 grams, and Sarah weighs in at 195.
Impressive.
Very impressive. Michelle gets 228 grams, Nimrod 172, and Alexi 158, meaning 500 euros for the challenge, and Sarah easily wins a chat with the mole.
Which one of the 4 dishes would you have wanted to eat?
Green curry.
I mean, not to try and help Fuzzy get a square of Michael can't handle spice. It would have had to be the chicken, because at least I could have picked the chicken out and wiped it on a napkin or something, as I had to do in China.
Like I probably would have wanted to eat the wonton soup most, but I think the chicken is probably deceptively difficult to split in half. Like, I think at least with the soup you can eyeball it. With the chicken, you're not sure whether, like, because the chicken and the noodles basically weigh different things.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just split it down the middle like Nimrod did, like, because you don't know whether there's more chicken on one side, more noodles on the other side, whatever. So I think Nimrod kind of got a bit stitched up by that.
Yeah. Knowing as we do that the mole was sat at this table, do you think the mole would have wanted to win the advantage?
No, because then that's money earned for the pot.
Yeah.
Because, assuming that it's not Sarah, because none of us think it is Sarah as number one at least this week, Michelle and Nimrod are exactly the same distance away from 200. Neither of them scored money. They were both exactly 28 grams away. And that, I think, is the optimum mole tactic, is get close to the 20 grams, but don't get the 20 grams.
Yeah, because I was thinking with Alexei, it's like, that's if he's the mole, that's just bad moling. You got to blend in a bit more.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of Alexei's dish Nimrod ended up eating.
Yeah. If Nimrod is the mole, that is a very interesting sabotage of trying to stop anyone getting money. So a waitress brings out the mole briefcase, and inside is a screen and a tool. The mole is in room 426, chatting to Sarah, unless she is the mole, in which case it's Jill typing back. So the mole reveals that they sabotage Sarah's helmet using the tool by adjusting the helmet's sensitivity. She's asked by the mole if she's going to feel guilty, and given the 5 mole books, the mole writes that they are the mole, and Sarah gets a chance to compare it to the sentences that have already been written at the front of the mole books. However, the money from earlier will count down when she switches the light on. And she stops at €220 and then €150 of 2,000 for the challenge.
Which one of these two advantages did you think was more helpful?
What, between Pedro's and the handwriting?
Between the handwriting and knowing how the mole case was used.
I mean, by default, the handwriting, because how the hell can you know who sabotaged the helmet?
Well, just whoever was unaccounted for would be my assessment.
Yeah, I think at least with the helmet, it's sort of helpful in that you might be able to work out A, when it happened, and B, once you know that, who was away from the group in that time period. But with the handwriting, I think the handwriting is a little bit easier to fake, the sort of the same way as Senna's voice with the AI thing last year was.
The mole absolutely has been practicing for 2 weeks to mimic everyone else's handwriting.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if they reveal at the finale that actually each letter of Ik Ben de Mol was one letter from someone else's mole book. Because it's exactly 10 letters.
Interesting.
The other thing I was thinking of, and I had a conversation with Bram about this during the week, on my theory that the mole briefcase is smoke and mirrors, I wonder if the things we're seeing from the mole briefcase are not necessarily being used in the same ways that we're seeing, but they are being used in that episode. Because the earpiece, for example, we know that Pedro and Michelle had an earpiece in the shop. But if the mole used an earpiece at, say, the skydiving, they would know whether people got them right or wrong if they were on the ground. That sort of a thing. I wouldn't be surprised if it's, yes, I did use this in the episode, but I didn't necessarily use it for what I said I did in the episode.
I'm just imagining, like, in the floating market, they're going along blindfolded, and then all of a sudden, Else gets bonked in the head with a Floor 37 sign.
Yeah, maybe the Floor 37 sign is the outlier to this. But something like, oh, here's the tool that I used to sabotage the helmet. I would not be surprised if it's something like Sarah could have opened a compartment in the mole briefcase using that tool to find out who the mole actually is.
Yeah.
Like, there is something more to that Allen key.
Yeah.
In my mind.
It could even be something like that Allen key was hidden inside the little cylinder that was sort of hiding which rope was which. And it was maybe tangled up in a way that sort of even the correct one would have pulled the hair off.
Yeah, there is something more to that tool, I think, than it just being, oh, I used it to open up your helmet. Because it was a very common Allen key tool. And there's no real reason to give Sarah the mole briefcase unless there is more to that mole briefcase.
Yeah.
How would you have played this if you were in Sarah's position as a mole or a contestant?
I probably would have realized sort of like the handwriting thing was going to be useless. So I don't think If I was a contestant, I don't think I would have gone for it. Especially because, like, let's say, it's not your writing, you can work out pretty easily it's not going to be whoever goes home this week if it's not you. So that leaves you down to 3. And by this point in the season, you should be on a suspect anyway. So I don't think there's anything you can really get from the handwriting. Like, it would be different if it was like episode 2 or whatever. Like, if this was something to do with the train challenge. But I think this thing basically useless at this point in the season, so I wouldn't have gone for it. But as a mole, I think Sarah probably played it pretty well. Like, I think if you use it all up, if you use up all of the money you had, that's a little bit too obvious as sabotage. But if you say, "Oh, I've still got 200," that's too much. I might just go back for another couple of seconds and drop it down to 150. I think that's a clever way for a mole to do it.
I think if you're a candidate as well, there is an element of Kenneth is macked. If you don't play it, only you and the mole know that you didn't play it. So you can use that to catch people out and see who might indicate that they also have a bit of knowledge of what went on. I think if you stonewall everyone else, that's actually where the power is, and where Sarah fell down, if she is a candidate, is she didn't really use it as a psychological tool like she should have done to try and weed out who the mole is if she's not confident.
Do you think Alexei laughed when Sarah fell down?
Oh, almost certainly. Because by default, she's now the old woman of the group, I think. I'm pretty sure she is the oldest of the 4 of them left. I know Michelle's deceptively old. I think Michelle's late 30s, but I think Sarah's older than her.
Yeah, well, Alexei and Nimrod are both 20s.
Yeah.
Like young 20s.
Yeah, Nimrod probably thinks that Michelle and Sarah are both too young for him.
Nimrod just wants the old ladies to stop throwing themselves all over it.
You know full well that Nimrod is gonna never be able to live that down.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he got somebody chose the steering wheel over him.
That's right. He'll just go to a water park with a silly name and get over it.
Yeah, Sarah's 36, Michelle's 35, Nimrod's 25, Alexei's 23.
She's 35.
Thank you. So she tells the others what the mole said, but Alexei doesn't know how much truth she actually told them. And they are driven to their new place in Nan province without Pedro. And it's day 14 in Nong Pru, and Pedro is still missing. And Nimrod tells us his deep, deep knowledge of the water parks of Europe.
I like how Jill introduces it as, yeah, it's day 14 and Pedro isn't here, and then just cuts to everyone going, "Wee, waterside."
His absence is really hitting the other candidates hard, and then they just start doing cannonballs.
Yeah. I have a very important suspicion to get off my chest. Cannonball.
No other show can get away with a transition like that. I don't really care what people say about this season, whether it's a lower tier than the previous couple or whatever. Like, no other show can get away with a dead serious Jill voiceover of, yeah, everyone's devastated about Pedro still not being back, and then it just being like, woo, water park, we've got a slide down accommodation, woo!
Yeah.
I realize Logan's obviously never heard of any of these places, but have you heard of any of those water parks, Michael?
No. I mean, I do love a water park, as I think we've previously discussed on the podcast. When I go to Disney, I do spend a fair few days at the Blizzard Beach in Typhoon Lagoon, just relaxing. I love a water park. I love a water slide, but no, I hadn't heard of any of those.
I'd heard of like a couple of them that have like proper theme parks attached to them. So I sort of knew Plopsaland or whatever it was, because there's a theme park called Plopsaland, which, like, genuinely, I'm not making that up. There's like an actual theme park called Plopsaland that's, I guess, must be next door to it or something.
Yeah, it sounds like a reason for the water park to be evacuated.
Yeah, exactly. And like every time I see somebody talking about European theme parks and it comes up, I just have to stop and laugh for like 5 minutes, because, like, why would you call a theme park that?
Yeah, I mean, quite infamously, when they were building Disneyland Paris, formerly Disneyland Accrington, they couldn't bring over Splash Mountain like they were originally planning to, because it's too cold in Western Europe during half of the year.
Yeah.
They are now, as part of the expansion that they're currently doing at the artist formerly known as Walt Disney Studios Park, doing a version of Splash Mountain that is Lion King themed and that is manna from heaven for me because I love Splash Mountain and I love The Lion King. Also, quite infamously, the wettest ride in Western Europe is now less than an hour away from Harmstone Heights, because that is Valhalla at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and I have ridden that, and it is disgustingly wet. Even when it's the height of summer and it's warm out like it has been today, you are still freezing cold because it's the north.
Is this the part where we cut to James Wallington saying, "It's all wet"?
Yes, it is.
So what you're saying is we should have like a group field trip to Plopsaland next time we're in Belgium?
Absolutely. If Saunders and I hadn't already planned our respective trips to Belgium, it would have been fairly tempting, I'll be honest. Maybe next year.
Maybe.
My mum did genuinely tell me off a few days ago. She's like, "Why'd you never tag some days on at the start and end of the Belgium Mol finale weekends?" And I'm like, "Well, I am doing this year because I'm in Amsterdam the day before, but also I've been to Antwerp a lot of times at this point. There are no more sites in Antwerp or in Brussels or anywhere else around."
That's like, I booked a holiday for a couple of weeks, basically after we finished doing this, and I was looking for places to go reasonably nearby, just for family reasons. And I'm like, I've already done everything there is to do in Sydney. I don't need to go back. But then, like, the other options are Tasmania, which is too cold in the middle of winter. Canberra, which is even worse, and which I just went to like 4 or 5 months ago. Or exotic Adelaide. So,
Ooh.
I know. I'm going to go there, and then I'm not going to be able to turn left or right. It's going to be wonderful.
I got that reference.
Yeah, I know. And I love that Logan has seen that season now, and he hasn't got that reference.
Oh, is that the Australia Bali season of Vidum?
Yeah, there's like one challenge where it's basically like a hostage rescue in downtown Adelaide, which is only about like 4 or 5 blocks. But like, one of the groups of searchers can't go left, and then the other group can't go right, and then basically they're only allowed to turn in the opposite direction once they find each other.
Right, I vaguely remember that challenge now.
Yeah. This has been another edition of Bindles Confuses Saunders.
So, the candidates are driven to a remote plantation, and Gilles misses Pedro a bit. He's locked up at the end of the path, but guarding him is a local militia, and if they realise the candidates are there, they will come after them. They have 1 hour to rescue Pedro and earn €5,000 for the pot, and Pedro is locked in a bus with 3 boxes that have 5 passfrag between them and a countdown timer.
If Jill told them this whilst at the hotel, they would have been like, "Oh, but there's a swimming pool."
Yeah, do we have to leave? There's a slide. We have 2 slides here.
Is he just a little kidnapped or really kidnapped by a Thai mafia group?
If we don't rescue him, does he come back for the test? Does he get an exemption? What are we playing with here?
Wait, he's executed? Like executed, or executed in the context of the game?
But we're too busy doing karaoke. You're the one that I wee.
So Alexi and Michelle are the first to enter the territory and find a security camera which can be disabled by answering questions and flicking switches, but the switches and the walkie-talkie are in the camera's view. If the camera sees them, an alarm goes off and the hunters come with paintball guns. Alexi sets off the alarm and they must sprint back to the safe zone, and the options are matches, lighters, or a hairdryer. Which of these gets the hottest? Nimrod flicks the matches switch and is incorrect, setting the alarm off. However, we see that selecting a wrong answer opens a passfrag box for Pedro. He has a sign that says if he walks out with passfragen in his pocket, he will keep them, but it will earn them no money for the pot. And Alexi then selects lighter, and the first camera gets disabled. This is a really cool challenge.
Yeah.
It's a really good challenge, and I think all 5 players were trying to screw with the challenge a little bit. There were a lot of mind games going on here. Because I think they all knew Pedro wasn't being helpful, but I think because just the way they were talking to each other, like, "Oh, do we trust him? Yeah, let's trust him on this answer." And they all knew that Pedro was going to give them a wrong answer, but they all agreed to it just so they could also make themselves look suspicious for going along with Pedro's answer.
Yeah. Do you think at this point that everyone is on the same mole? Apart from Pedro. Obviously.
I think maybe, because otherwise I'm not sure. Like, I feel like everyone else must have been a lot closer than Pedro, just because he had 3 Passfragen and still went home. But we don't know whether that's like he was 3 or 4 points behind Alexi and Michelle, or whether he was, only 2 or 3 points behind Nimrod and Sarah. I think either they were all on the right person and Pedro just nowhere close, or like they were on like people who had a lot of overlap together.
So the second camera doesn't move, but it turns itself on and off every 12 seconds. And the question is, which item weighs the least? But to answer it, they have to build a ladder using rungs that are hidden in the grass. Another wonderful challenge.
Also, Michelle rolling in the grass was hilarious.
Yes. Alexa gets caught on the camera again, and it's a much longer run back to the start this time, and he gets shot. And then Pedro gives him a wrong answer to end Passfragen, and in the process raises suspicions with the others. They suspect he may be giving them wrong answers, and he gives them the right answer for the second question in the hope that they will answer wrong again.
Like how they figure out, maybe there's another layer to this Belgian mole challenge.
Maybe the guy who keeps getting advantages might be getting advantages for misleading us here. And the final question is, which of these has existed the longest, a seatbelt, a windscreen wiper, or a license plate? And to answer it, Nimrod must balance on a slack line to stay above the camera. And he says windscreen wipers, and the alarm goes off again.
I love that Michelle was like, but Downton Abbey is a documentary, right?
And I like how they also all said, yeah, we're all pretty sure it's a license plate, but I did see a windshield wiper in Downton Abbey, so I wish it would have been, which of these has existed the longest? A seatbelt, a windshield wiper, a license plate, or Belgian mole?
I don't think we actually found out what the correct answer was here.
Was it a license plate?
I did Google it and I can't remember what it was. I think two of them were early 1900s. One of them is 1890s or something.
Yeah, I think seatbelt is
50s, isn't it?
Probably more modern. They weren't mandatory until like the 50s or about 3 weeks ago in Canada. But I think I'd probably go license plate of the 3.
Yeah. I'm just Googling now. License plates are 1893. Windscreen wipers are 1902. And I think seatbelt was a bit later. First seatbelts were invented in the late 19th century, but like the modern version was 1959.
Yeah.
So I was about to say, the reason why I assumed it was late 1950s or 1950s in general is because if you go to Cuba, they have the old style American cars and none of them have seatbelts.
Yeah, good point.
So that's why I figured seatbelt was definitely the wrong answer, just from riding in those myself when I was in Cuba.
I think license plates were invented long before they were actually mandatory.
Yeah. Well, you don't need a windscreen wiper on a horse.
Yeah.
Unless you are Logan Saunders.
I love how as soon as you say that sentence, you can hear Logan's heart dropping because he knows there's going to be a he fucks a horse joke coming.
I'm sorry, Logan.
I'm not.
I thought we were going to talk about how much horsepower a horse has.
Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Nay!
There's only one person here who knows about horsepower, Saunders, and it's not Mol Bindles. So, Michelle gets shot after the alarm goes off again, and they disable the third camera and see the final sign, discovering that Pedro has been playing for Passfragen.
What? Shocked Pikachu face.
If they press the button at the back, it will eliminate all Passfragen and earn them €2,000 for the pot, but Pedro tries negotiating. Do you think there is any permutation of these people where someone would not have taken the Passfragen?
Maybe if Nimrod was in the Jeep?
Yeah. I think even if the mole was in the Jeep, and obviously they weren't, there is a way for them to still keep money out of the pot even if they don't take the Passfragen. Obviously, it's the easy option to just go, yeah, I'm going to take the Passfragen and wipe the $5,000. But even then, you convince them that you've taken Passfragen and it still keeps €3,000 out of the pot even if they press the button. It's a gamble, but you still have the opportunity of keeping $3,000 away from them here.
Yeah.
So, when they all reunite, Pedro confirms that no money was earned and grasses on Sarah and Nimrod taking one of the Passfragen each. That means they earn nothing of €5,000 for the challenge, €850 of 11,000 for the episode, and €12,690 of 79,900 for the season so far.
What did you think of Sarah's strategy of basically extorting him into it's this or it's nothing?
I think it's an interesting tactic from Sarah because I know the people on Discord who were very gung ho on Pedro are now very gung ho on Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really see it in the same way that I can't really see it being Pedro, and I can't really see it being Alexei, and let's be honest, can't really see it being Nimrod either. Famous last words. But it was interesting because as a mole, I think you want to find a way to waste time. You want to find a way to set the alarm off, which is exactly what Michelle does with Alexei and her interesting counting from 1 to 12, being a little bit pacey. I think you probably, as soon as the candidates realise that there are Passfragen in play, or an advantage at least in play for Pedro, I think you let them screw themselves with this challenge, and you maybe try and get to the end and stop them earning any money, but you sure as hell waste their time as much as possible. Because the negotiation at the end between Pedro, Nimrod, and Sarah, they only have about 3 minutes for it. That's an ideal scenario for a mole, because the less time they have to decide, the more abrupt their decision making is going to be, the more sudden their decision making is going to be. They're going to make selfish choices if they don't have a lot of time to think about what the choices are.
Mm.
And I think it's fair to say that, mole or not, Michelle is a little bit upset at them.
I was thinking if Michelle's the mole, the reason or this increased my suspicion of her is just how I feel like she was overdoing it to the point she was doing it for her own personal comedic effect, especially referring to it as signing our death warrants after they all just celebrated Pedro being kidnapped by playing at a water park all day.
The thing that I think of is going back to last season. At Final Five, we had that paintball challenge where all the mole books were at stake, and everyone felt really bad for Senna because he lost his mole book to the fire. Meanwhile, he's the mole, he don't give a shit, he's laughing his head off at them. Michelle is in exactly the same sort of position as Senna in terms of a woe is me at the end of this paintball challenge at Final Five.
Mm.
Well, you just signed our death warrants. I might be going home to my baby.
Yeah, it's a little bit dramatic if she isn't the mole.
I wonder how many more seasons it's going to be until contestants say, ooh, it's the paintball game.
Or everyone loses their mind at it being the paintball game, to be more precise.
Yeah. Ooh, paintball game. Oh my god, I made it to the paintball game portion of the Mol België.
So, it is now time for the test. To any questions about the identity and actions of the mole, whoever knows least goes home, except for the mole who can never go home. Pedro has 3 Passfragen, and Nimrod and Sarah have 1 each. Alexei says this is the most stressful execution so far. He's had to trust Michelle a bit, and the camera started rolling a little bit earlier than she said. He's been told that Sarah was the main proponent of taking the Passfragen. Michelle is feeling defeated because she's got no Passfragen. Pedro must feel very insecure. Sarah says Alexei always gets knocked out of physical challenges. Nimrod is holier than thou, but always takes advantages himself. Pedro says the mole would want to be at the button on the truck. And Nimrod says Pedro is great at the golf practice, but not in the real thing. Michelle had some terrible shots too. Gilles tells them that some things have become clear. The final stretch is almost here, and it's intense. The only thing not keeping up is the pot, which is very low at this point. He then types in Michelle and Alexei's names as they had no Passfragen, and both are green, meaning that whoever got the red wasn't saved by the Passfragen. Pedro is the third to get typed in, and he gets the red, and that sound you can hear is the heartbreak of so many people.
Yeah.
He gone!
I must admit, I did cheer when Pedro went, because Pedro was our traditional, oh god, he's too obvious to be the mole, isn't he? Am I going to get fooled here at the finale candidate? So when he went home, I did a little cheer, because I'm like, it's a shame I don't get to meet him necessarily, but thank fuck he's not the mole, because I was getting a bit worried.
Apparently, Papa Bear has anointed him the king of personal advantages.
I mean, look, at least he probably won't slap you for all the things I've said this season.
Very true. Someone looked up whether Pedro is the record holder for most advantages, and Apparently, he's basically tied with Michael Mont, because Michael Mont had a lot of advantages last season. Which makes sense, because they're exactly the same age, I think.
Famously, 41-year-olds love getting advantages.
Yeah, very much.
Classic stereotype.
Yeah. I mean, it's straight from advantages to bleating.
Yeah, as soon as you get above the Arthbrancoursius line, it's straight into the advantage zone. And he says he was super grateful he'd not figured out who the mole was until the last second, and he says he was lucky to make it that far. Sarah says they kept ending up together, she's going to feel a bit lost without him, and he says he put too much trust in people he shouldn't have, he wanted to push his limits, and he was a standout in every activity.
Is this the biggest advantage somebody has played and still get executed?
It's kind of got to be, I think.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like in Vidum there's, because I remember Vidum, Argentina, there was that first execution, but the guy didn't play any pass fragging. He just went. He had to will it to another player, bequeath it to another player. But I'm trying to think if somebody outright had a 3 pass fragging advantage over multiple people and still got executed anyway.
I don't remember any.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has whiffed a 3 pass fragging advantage before. So, next time they play for 10,000 balls, Michelle is the tour guide, Alexi tells a joke, they face their fears in a Batman building, and there are lasers.
Laser game.
It is technically a laser game. I'm assuming, looking at the trailer, that Michelle and Sarah act as tour guides, and Nimrod and Alexi are in charge of the ball deposit.
I hope Michelle and Sarah are familiar with how to tell the difference between different breeds of rhinos.
The next episode looks like it takes place in Pattaya. Should you be interested?
Gross.
Because it's the city sightseeing Pattaya bus that Michelle and Sarah were on.
Well, that explains all the balls.
Yeah.
Do you know what Pattaya's reputation is in Thailand and why I've never been there?
I'm going to assume it's a shithole.
It's just very, very notorious for sex tourism.
Oh.
Yeah.
Let's just say a lot of people who go to Pattaya are Westerners who bleat.
So on the pool, Bindles loses his second team member, leaving him with just Nimrod. Logan still has Sarah and Alexi, and I have Michelle. No switches were used, meaning those are our teams for good.
How the hell is Saunders winning?
I know, this is what I mean. Saunders is the first person this season guaranteed a finalist. It also greatly amuses me now that we seem to be alternating who loses a team member, meaning that hopefully Saunders loses one next week, and we go into the finale with a 1-1-1 split, which is arguably the most interesting way for our pool to end every season. Personally, obviously, I'd love it if all 3 of my team members were the final 3, as has happened before, but, I do appreciate the symmetry of a 1-1-1 split at the end of the season.
I can't believe I forgot to use my power to steal all 5 of the team members.
I know you didn't even mention that last week.
Yeah, it's so rude of me.
I was very disappointed in you. On First Suspicions, 3 people, Brig, Walter, and our very own David Brindley, had Pedro in first, while Tim was the only one who had him in the bottom 2. 8 people now remain with the First Suspicion, including, unfortunately, Logan Saunders. And I must remind everyone that Nimrod has no First Suspicions. We have a new First Suspicions leader with a score of 13. Abe is now ahead, while Alice has double that with 26. And as always, you can do the suspect list with Balthazar Bar each week at suspectlist@rtvwarriors.com or at the link in our bio. And the bonus question this week is, did the mole earn a pass frag in the rescue challenge, yes or no? Fair warning as well, 2 weeks left to use your Yoker. Next week's bonus question is going to be, who is the winner, as is now traditional. So if you are a bit of a wuss about that question and not wanting to double that score, I suggest you use it this week. Flanders suspicions last week were Pedro with 30%, Michelle with 26%, Sarah with 19%, Nimrod with 15%, and Alexi with 10%. Final 2 questions. Who do we suspect? And who is going to be our final loser before the finale?
So I suspect Michelle, then Nimrod, then Alexi, then Sarah, then I had Pedro at the bottom. I think we're going to say goodbye to Nimrod. I think that's going to be a shocking execution.
I'm going to put Nimrod at the top, then Sarah, Alexi, Michelle. I feel like we've said Alexi's going home so many times that it hasn't happened yet, so I'm going to say Michelle.
You said Michelle last week, to be fair.
Yes, and I don't listen to myself. You know that by now.
I've learned to tune myself out.
I think last week Saunders said Alexi, you said Michelle, I said Sarah, and then none of those things happened. My suspects are Michelle, then Sarah, then Nimrod, then Alexi, and I think, again, for the second week, Sarah is going to be going home. Although, selfishly, I think, in terms of us going to the finale, I think we would probably get more fun chat from Michelle, Nimrod, and Sarah.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this episode?
No, I'm good.
It's good.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was probably the best episode of the season so far, I would say.
Which is surprising because Hilda's not here.
Yeah, maybe Hilda was distracting us from the entertainment that we could have had this season. Maybe Hilda's the problem.
You monster.
Who am I kidding? When she walks into the press room in 2 weeks, I'm going to be screaming my head off.
Yeah,
Hilda,
I
we
know.
love you!
And that's how I got banned from future Belgian Mole finales. Da 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 da.
So, thank you for listening to our Mol België Season 13 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for the newest mole in Thailand. Don't forget you can contact us on pretty much every social media platform that isn't TikTok, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us and contact at rtvwarriors.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors. Thank you, as always, to the Legion of Subtitlers. We'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next flavoring.
This isn't how I imagined getting wet with Nimrod.
Wow.